Good evening and welcome to See You at USC. I'm your Monday night host, Alexia Narcisse, and I am here today with Kenyon, who is a key player in Furious M, which is a new VR studio. He is a VR connoisseur, a producer, and a filmmaker. Stay tuned. We are back live. We're here with Kenyon. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Now, for those of you who don't know, this man is a USC alum, so he is a part of the Trojan family, and you've been doing so much in VR and just reshaping the platform of how VR works, how it incorporates itself into media and film and entertainment. So I'm curious as to how you ended up doing that.
So it was an interesting story, actually. First, I'd like to say I'm so happy you guys have couches now next to Tommy Trojan. So I was always pushing for that when I was here, but you guys made it happen. I've been making films for a while now. Got interested in it after USC, actually. I studied philosophy and cinematic arts, went to an acting school, and then spent a lot of time in theater, short films, features. And a couple of years ago, I got my hands on the development kit for Oculus, and I had set it up to work on my Mac, and so I had to go on a bunch of different forums and try and figure out how this was actually possible, because it's designed for a PC and not a Mac. I found one forum where somebody explained how to do it. It took me about 8 hours to set this thing up, and when I finally got it all set up, there was this one demo called the Tuscany demo that I was just infatuated with, and this was just a villa in Italy, and you would walk around and there were butterflies, and it was just beautiful, gorgeous, and you could look down and you'd see this amazing, beautiful blue water, and I couldn't believe it felt this real to me. My roommate comes home after I'm in this for I don't know how long, and he's like, "Oh, that's crazy, I want to try this. Can I put it on?" And this is before I really knew anything about VR or, sim sickness, that you can actually get sick from this. So I was like, yeah, put it on. And you know what? I'm not going to wait for you to learn how to control this. I'm just going to make you run and jump and sprint. So after about 10 seconds, he throws this thing off and he runs to the couch and he's like, oh my God. And he's sick for a long time. We're talking a few hours. Yeah. And instead of worrying about him, I actually went back to the headset and started doing research, like, what is actually going on with this device? This is crazy. How did this, in 10 seconds, my buddy just got
doubled over.
Yeah, crazy. So I started doing a little research on kind of the neuroscience behind VR and how our brain actually kind of connects and responds to it. And from that, I got real interested in how we can tell stories based on this prior knowledge of kind of what a few people in Stanford and places in North Carolina, they've had these labs that have been doing decades of research. And all over the world, they've been researching VR in the brain. But it hasn't been until recently that we've had the camera technology to actually shoot it with live action and humans. And that led me to work on my first kind of VR series called Defrost, written and directed by Randall Kleiser, another USC alum who did Grease and Flight of the Navigator, and produced by Tanner Frederick. And in this piece, it's a 12-part series. You actually become the main character of the story, who
so you are the main character.
You are the main character. So when you look down, you will see your body, and you are paralyzed and you can't talk. So the brain can actually connect to this character, because in VR you can't talk, and for this 360 experience you can't move either. So the story is told in such a way where the brain is able to connect with it and slowly embody that character, because it meets certain illusions that are necessary in order for the brain to believe that it's in a virtual environment.
Now, I'm wondering, with a film like this, do you need people to sign off disclosures that they're not going to claim that they were traumatized by it?
Not yet. There's also a rating system hasn't been established in VR because it's so new, but that is going to be something that is a hot topic because, as you know, it can be traumatic for some people to watch a very horrific or graphic film. Imagine you're not watching it, but you're now experiencing it.
You're living it.
You're living it. So if it's a well-made piece, you can imagine the kind of trauma that somebody can experience if, let's say, you get shot or you see somebody like die in front of you. It's quite different than watching it on a flat screen where your brain is like, oh, that's not happening in this room. In VR, your brain actually first believes that it's
this is
there.
it.
It's
And then
called,
you have to, I'm assuming,
presence.
double back and kind of say.
You have to kind of bring yourself out of it. But our brains, a lot of people say they aren't evolved yet to understand virtual reality. So, yeah.
That is so interesting. Now, when you guys are working on this film, is it just like typical acting? Is it a regular film environment with different types of cameras?
Yeah, so you have one camera, and that in this piece it was on top of a dummy body. And so it's all the actors are kind of working around this, treating the camera as the character.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And so in Defrost, there was Harry Hamlin, Carl Weathers, Bruce Davidson, a lot of really talented actors that have worked with Randall in the past, and they kind of have been trained in theater, and so they kind of pick this up really easily. But that's a huge issue that a lot of people are realizing now is it's not like acting for film. It's more like acting for theater. And directing as well. You have to direct with blocking, sound, lighting, as opposed to scenes.
Wow.
Yeah, and this kind of has now been where my interest lies in VR, is developing more stories that toy with the notion of the self, seeing if we can transfer consciousness into other people, and if that's possible, can we do it into other beings, animals, aliens, and then I'm developing one that's trying to see if we can do it into an AI machine.
Wow, okay. So when people want to see your films, do they need to go to like a studio to experience this, if it has smells and temperatures?
So yeah, when we did a festival run with a few episodes last year where I incorporated smells, and that's the interesting thing right now, is there's not really a market for VR, and there are so many different platforms that it's really hard for somebody to get access to it if they don't have the high-end Oculus, if they don't have the high-end Rift. There are a few different location-based services around LA. So there's one right across from the Grove. IMAX has put it up, and they are kind of testing out to see what people are interested in, what they're going to come and check out. Is it games? Is it movies? Is it like they want to spend 2 hours there, or is it they just want to go and shoot zombies?
Okay.
And so we're really in a testing mode where people are really trying to figure out what the market is going to be for this new industry, because everybody who works in it right now is aware that this is going to be a reality. This is going to be the future. VR and AR, those things are going to really change, I think, our society. The question is, how are we going to get there, and who is going to be the one that figures out how to bring the rest of the public into kind of this space that we exist in right now?
And right now it seems like that's you and your team.
Hopefully, this is what we're trying to do. So I'm developing an application, mobile application, that instead of creating different kind of VR experiences, we're taking a pre-designed fan base around an entertainer or a musician or an influencer. And we're figuring out what they like about that. Kind of a more immersive type of social media in the most kind of, I guess, it's the most inclusive form of kind of social media you can have, where if you consider a picture and a video to be, oh, I want to get closer to these people's lives and see what they're doing, you imagine VR is kind of the ultimate, oh, wow, it's really like I'm there, I'm eating dinner with them, I'm right at the table with them. So I'm working on that too, and the point of that is, instead of spending a lot of money and creating a amazing VR piece and having people come and try and find it, we're going to them and we're saying, we know what you like, you like this person, you like this film, you like that. We're going to try and create VR pieces around that and educate them. Say, your phone can be a VR device. You just need a cardboard headset. Once they're comfortable with that, maybe they move on to the next headset and then the next one.
Now, could this perspectively be something like where you're sitting at a table with a celebrity? Let's say, like, would you guys have to hire those influencers or those celebrities to say, hey, Rihanna, for a day, you're just going to carry around the Oculus and people are going to see what it's like for you going from fashion place to set to your home.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so and kind of a lot of it is based on my kind of research, and I'm actually conducting an experiment in Switzerland to prove that the brain really does believe that it's another person or that it's there. So to achieve this presence, and kind of that's the first step in order to say, yeah, you can really feel like you're next to this person. And that's, in addition to celebrities, think about that with family, and having, a loved one leave a kind of, I don't know the right way to say this, but they used to do these goodbye videos where, your grandma or grandpa would leave a video and say goodbye, then you would watch it later. Think about that with VR and creating this, long-lasting experience with somebody that you love in the most kind of present way possible, which I do believe is virtual reality.
Now I've got to ask this. Have you ever seen Black Mirror? Because
yes.
you
so many
you have to have.
So many of those stories are just, that's kind of exactly what's going to happen. And it is scary, but the way I view Black Mirror and, the possibility of VR and AR, it's scary until you realize that it's going to happen whether or not we're afraid of it or not. And so
you just got to take it.
We got to take it, but also we need to start creating experiences and educating the public that this is going to be the way of the future. This is happening whether we like it or not. It's up to us to create positive experiences and to educate the public so we aren't out there traumatizing kids with, Grand Theft Auto and VR where they're, going around
killing people
and taking their money. Because they're actually, they've trained people in virtual reality. They've trained the army. They are working on diversion therapy for, victims of traumatic burns so essentially your brain can only focus on one thing at one time. So if you're in a VR space and you're getting kind of a second skin applied, your brain is going to focus on kind of the visual and audio as opposed to
feel
the
that
sensory.
Instead of, wow.
Yeah.
Now, where do you foresee the future of VR being? I know that's a broad question.
Yeah, well, hopefully more people will understand that it is widely consumable now just on your mobile phone. It's not going to be the same as an Oculus or a Rift, but it will kind of give you an idea of what's going to happen. So once we kind of build this market, I hope people use it for, everything, anything that they want. And then down the line, this is going to go a little too sci-fi, but I work in sci-fi, and I think you'll see a trailer of a feature that I made, which isn't sci-fi, but it's a little genre. It's weird. It's out there, so I'm very interested in that stuff. I do believe that VR could be a step into the singularity and help us go to that next step where I think AI will eventually go.
Okay, great. We're going to finish this right after this break. We'll be back. We're going to actually use a VR device. We're going to look at some of his work, and in addition, we're going to talk about what it's like learning about VR from a beginner's perspective. Stay tuned. We are back with Mario Kenyon, the VR guru. And for this second segment, I want to touch on not only some of his VR work, we're going to see some of the VR in action. I know, this is way too exciting, so buckle up your seatbelt, literally or figuratively. And we're also going to be talking about his acting career and how that transitioned into a production role. So I guess that's the first thing I'd want to touch on is how were you, because it's clear that you have a charismatic presence, you could be a fantastic actor. How did you kind of say, maybe this is what I want to do, maybe I should be behind the scenes?
So the first time I acted was, I think I was like 6 years old in a few school plays, and then did some theater in the San Francisco area. Stopped for a while, went to USC pre-med, switched to philosophy, minored in cinematic arts. Instead of going to med school, then I was going to go to law school, and then right before I graduated, I was like, Mom and Dad, I'm going to see what acting school's about. So they were very disappointed.
They're like, our $60,000 tuition.
Sent me to LA from San Francisco to be a doctor. I come back, I'm going to see what acting's about and work this job and that job to pay through school. I realized I loved acting. I studied the Meisner technique over at Baron Brown, but I didn't really love the lifestyle that I was experiencing living in LA. I lived in Venice at the time. I was driving to Hollywood for all these auditions. You know, sometimes it would take an entire day to prep for one and then come home and didn't get the role or got the role, and the director turned out to suck or the producers didn't know what they were doing. I just felt like I was wasting a lot of my time. Even though I did love acting, I didn't like what I was currently doing, and I wasn't really, I guess I'm a pretty indecisive and impatient person by me switching everything. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to see if I can get into theater a little bit more, because I think that's a little bit more of what I want to do as far as acting. And so I produced a few original theatrical productions, really loved it. I got into short film, and then I had a buddy of mine who wrote a script with some philosophical elements in it. It's called Brutal. He wanted me to act in it, and then asked if I wanted to help kind of get it started. So I found some funding, and then just like that, I was producing my first feature.
Wow.
And luckily, smartphones were a thing back then, because I was on my phone and people were asking me all these things. I was like, yeah, I know what that is. I will have that to you by tomorrow. That should be possible. So it was really a true case of fake it till you make it.
You built your own position.
Yeah. And then recently I met up with a few incredible guys that I've been producing with for, you know, the last 3 or 4 films. And it's kind of like working with your best friends. And we're all kind of pretty young. We know what kind of films we want to make. We're all interested in the same thing, elevated genre, if you will. So kind of horror and thriller, but there's a underlying message, there's a purpose behind the gore or the scares. So that's what I've been working on, and now VR, and I'm interested in exploring those kind of areas in virtual reality as well.
Okay, now I wonder if, as a producer who knows acting so well and who has dedicated a piece of his life to it, are there times when you're producing something and you're just looking at it like, I need to get out there, I could do this better, like I know what I want this to look like?
Sometimes, but not really. Usually you're worried about something else, or you appreciate this other take on it.
Okay.
I remember when I first kind of transitioned from acting into producing, one of the most eye-opening things was casting. And I was casting for, I think it was, it was my first play. And I had a friend of mine came in, and she auditioned, and she was great. She was probably the best actor all day, but she didn't kind of really fit the role. She didn't, it wouldn't have made sense with the other kind of actors, and we would have had to rewrite the role a little bit. And at that moment I realized, wow, this whole acting thing it's really not in your control as much as you would like to think. You can go in and knock it out of the park, and it could be the best acting anyone's ever seen, but if it doesn't fit the role that the director or the producers had, they might not pick you. And I told her, listen, you're the best. It just, we would have to change so much about this
To accommodate
to
you.
accommodate. And that's when I really realized that, wow, there's, you know, so many times that I got kind of rejected or anything like that, and I was like, what did I do wrong? It's not necessarily something you did wrong. You might not just been right for the role. And I guess I wanted more control, and that's how I realized that I want to kind of produce and have a little bit more say in the whole structure of something.
Wow, so in that moment you were like, I'm a producer. This is what I'm sent to do.
So, and I would love to get back into acting. There hasn't really been the right time to really go back and study, because it's more than just auditioning. You have to practice daily. You have to keep up the work. And your mind has to really be in it. You have to want to do it. You have to want to kind of waste an entire day going to an audition. You have to love that. And I didn't love that at the moment, but I still love acting. So hopefully one day I will get back into it, or I'll just start putting myself in funny little ridiculous roles in my own movies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, have you by chance introduced your family to VR? Like, do they now see this is a real thing? This is going to be huge.
Yes, they do. And actually work with my dad at Furious M.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so I kind of handle a little bit more of the creative, and he's been in kind of media and entertainment for a while, so he handles more of the kind of underlying platform and the data-driven aspect of VR, because there's so much data involved in this. And then eventually, when there is a market for it, and you have to send out these videos and projects worldwide, how is that going to be possible? And so it's been interesting exploring that avenue of VR, where you have all of these different kind of areas coming together. You have tech, you have gaming, you have data, you have art, you have filmmaking, and they all merge in this new medium, VR and AR. And so it's been really exciting meeting all these new people with different ideas and different ways of approaching what we have.
Wow. Do you have any idea of what you want your legacy to be within VR? Because I think what's so important about right now is this is a time in history, and whether or not we choose to acknowledge it, this platform is going to be the future of how we consume information.
Yeah, I would really love to create the piece that freaks people out, not in like a horror sense of that was really scary, but I didn't know my brain was capable of becoming another thing. I didn't know my brain was capable of thinking like that. It's been really interesting doing research on the brain in VR and seeing just how distinct you are from your brain. And even if you understand something, your brain is struggling to process this. And that's really fascinating. And I would like to tap into that and see what kind of stories I can tell with that understanding without harming people's brains too much. And that's the kind of fine line. Are you going to give somebody a mental breakdown if they think that they're a robot?
Spectacular. Now, I have to ask if you could show us.
Yes, so this is just a 360 camera. Hooks right up to your phone. And not sure if you guys can see this, but yeah, it takes a live 360 recording right here. You can take videos, photos, and then you can upload to Facebook 360, YouTube, and then eventually you can make it so people can watch it in a headset. And this is a very obviously kind of small, low-end camera compared to what we've worked with, but it's pretty interesting that we have this technology available and we can use our phones to do it.
Wow. Okay, so if we were to make a video right now, do you think you can turn it on and start one up?
We can try.
And is this something that's basic? Like if I bought this for my grandma for Christmas, would she struggle or or would she be able to show us her retirement home?
She'd be able to show you her retirement home.
Okay, great.
All
she's
right.
not in one, and she's probably watching,
So
I don't know how that's gonna go. Oh wow. No, can we turn it this way so they can possibly? Do you guys see this? That is
so it's
way
a live
cool.
of this. We'll take a video.
Oh, so cool. Now, can these videos like move on to different platforms? Can I put this on Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook, YouTube. Right now, it's a pretty quick upload, and then once you kind of finish it, you can make it available on a Samsung Gear, on an Oculus. Yeah, okay. So this is your standard 360 video where the person puts on a headset. They're not going to be able to move around in the experience like they would if it's CGI, where you have positional tracking. Okay. So it's just, imagine you're a spinning kind of head that can look up and down and all around, but in higher end VR, you're able to move in a space probably as big as this room that we're in right now. Okay. You're able to duck, you're able to jump, and there's going to be sensors that track your every movement in the headset. So your brain will really feel like, oh my God, I'm here. And then when you incorporate haptics, which is touch, and then scent, smell, you can really start to understand how your brain can conceivably believe that it's in an alternate space.
Wow, okay. So for people who want to buy these devices, but we're on a college budget.
Right.
So where is the middle ground? Like, what can we purchase? What can we use?
So I'm assuming everybody has a smartphone, in which case a simple headset like a Google Cardboard, and those range from $5 or free if you go to any event
on this campus.
Yeah. So some pretty interesting apps out there. You can check it out. If you have a Samsung, you can get the Gear. And then, you know, pretty soon we're going to see, hopefully Apple will come out with a VR. Yeah, hopefully that'll come out soon. We're all waiting for that. And then as far as the cameras go, yeah, you can buy a bunch of different 360 cameras and start playing with it just to see if it's something you're interested in. And yeah, it's readily available, and that's what I hope people are, you know, aware of, is that don't kind of feel like VR is out of touch, that this is way ahead. This is happening right now. And, you know, even if your first experience in it isn't compelling, make sure that it's not blurry, make sure that the focus is right. You know, there's always different things that have to be precise in order for you to really enjoy it. For example, for Defrost, when you're sitting down in a wheelchair, if you're standing up and you're watching it, it's a completely different feeling and a completely different understanding for your brain than if you're sitting down, because your brain will start to connect. So just thinking about that, you can understand how all of the elements need to be pretty perfect for you to have an enjoyable experience, which sounds crazy right now. We'll get over that. But just make sure that you're not checking it out and being like, this is blurry, and throw it out. Or I don't really care about this live 360 thing. There's nothing here for me. There's a lot of stuff out there, but there needs to be more.
Of course. Now, I have to thank you for coming on today. I have
Thank
to
you.
make sure that everyone knows that you will be speaking at the Cannes Film Festival,
I'll
running a panel.
be working on a panel at Cannes, and then I'll be the host of the World VR Forum in Switzerland, and those are both in May.
Fantastic. So they'll stay in touch with you. Thank you so much. Everyone, we'll see you next week.
What up, though? I'm Big Snoop Dogg, and you're watching The Scoop.
Fight on for Cinderella. Fight on.
Fight on.
Fight on for Frozen.
Fight on.
Fight on USC.
Fight on. Fight on.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Trojan Vision. Happy birthday